While I make every effort to broadcast correct information, I'm also still learning. I will double check all my facts, but realize that healthcare is a constantly changing science and art. One doctor or healthcare provider may have a different way of doing things from another. I welcome any comments, suggestions, or correction of errors. I take no money from supplement or device companies. By listening to this podcast or reading this blog, you agree not to use this podcast or blog as medical advice or to treat any medical condition in either yourself or others, including but not limited to patients that you are treating. Consult your healthcare provider for any medical issues that you may be having. This entire disclaimer also applies to any guests or contributors to the podcast or the website. Under no circumstances shall any guests or contributors to the podcast or blog or any employees, associates, or affiliates of the Boss Body podcast be responsible for damages arising from use of the podcast or the blog. This blog or podcast should not be used in any legal capacity whatsoever, including but not limited to establishing the standard of care in a legal sense or as a basis for expert witness testimony. No guarantee is given regarding the accuracy of any statements or opinions made on the podcast or the blog. What's up, guys? It's Dr. Tim Jackson with another episode of the Boss Body Podcast. Today, I have with me Dr. Farah Sultan. She's a medical doctor, board certified in both family medicine as well as functional and regenerative medicine. She has trained and worked on 3 continents in India, the UK, and the United States. She is the founder of Vitalogy Wellness and Med Spa, and the creator of the Mandala Method. She is an international award-winning speaker and expert in sleep and hormone balance, and has helped thousands of women regain their sleep, energy, and youthfulness without the use of addictive prescription medications. She lives with her husband and 3 children in Birmingham, Alabama, and loves to travel, read, garden, cook, and biohack her health and fitness. Welcome, Dr. Farah.
Thank you. So good to be here, Tim. And I'm so excited to dive deep into this topic with you.
Yeah, so I know that you have a few different areas you specialize in, but one thing we wanted to discuss today is the importance of sleep. And we've known for a long time how important sleep is, but today it seems like so many people, even functional medicine providers I know, including myself in the past, have struggled with sleep issues. So if we can kind of do a deep dive and let's talk about what you see in your patients in terms of the most common culprits behind insomnia.
Definitely. This problem, as you know, is growing. About 1/3 of the population has some issue when it comes to sleep, and it's not getting any better with our modern day lives. And that itself, even though modern day devices are convenience, they can also lend to lack of sleep. So it was only after the invention of electricity and light bulbs that we started noticing this phenomena, and people were able to work night shifts. And as you know, people who work the graveyard shift have some of not only the worst cortisol levels, but also have deep issues with insomnia, which can impact so many other aspects of their lives. So other than electricity, now with handheld devices and smartphones, we're always such an on society, and not just the blue light itself, but other toxins like EMFs in our environment are also contributing to poor sleep. Also, our ancestors, they slept on beds that were probably made of hay or leaves, and now we have very comfortable beds and furniture, but they say that the environment within our bedrooms within our houses is probably much more toxic than even nature outside. And so mattresses, especially foam mattresses, rubber mattresses, they have anti-fire retardants, which can really emit VOCs and other toxins that can impact not only our hormones, but also our sleep. And so other than environmental toxins and EMFs and dirty electricity, we also have hormone imbalances that can play such a big role in affecting our quality of sleep. And then, of course, there's infections, inflammation, foods that, and even the timing of when you eat that matters, that influences this whole cascade and this whole mini environment within our bodies that can impact and influence our sleep drive, our hormones for sleep like melatonin, and our circadian rhythms.
Absolutely. So do you have a particular brand or a couple of brands of mattresses that you recommend to your patients?
I do recommend the organic, like the avocado mattress. I love that. I also love an accessory to the mattress, like the chili pad, which temperature can play such a big role in especially your core temperature in the depth of your REM and non-REM sleep. So I do advocate some of those, especially when your body is going through changes like menopause, that chilling down your temperature to a lower core temperature can really help you have a better night's sleep.
Absolutely. I see that so often. I mean, you and I are both in the southeastern United States, and so it's hot most of the year. And so you got to keep it cool. I've noticed it definitely affects the quality of my sleep, quality and quantity. In terms of light, you mentioned artificial light, before the Industrial Revolution, when it was dark, we were pretty much going to bed. I use blue blockers. I use the Sleep Savior brand, and they filter out both blue and green light. Do you have a particular brand that you recommend to people?
I do. I recommend the Raw Optics. I have used the one that Dave Asprey recommends as well, True Dark. And I've used other brands as well. So as long as you're using, for example, I just traveled to India, and with jet lag, I found that using the red blue light blocking glasses was even more effective than just the plain blue light blocking glasses. And that really helped me with handling jet lag and not feeling like I can't enjoy my tour and my trip just after landing.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think mattresses are so important. I have underneath my mattress a Magnetico 10 Gauss pad to recreate the Schumann resonance. Our ancestors were obviously sleeping on the ground or close to the ground, and we sort of lost that connection. And I noticed a definite sort of increased vitality. It's hard to kind of quantify it, but definite improvement in mood by adding it. And 10 Gauss is on the lower end, but I still noticed a difference. Do you recommend grounding or earthing to your
I
patients?
most definitely do. And I use a grounding pad myself at bed, on my desk right now, and when I'm working on the computer at my feet at home. I love to step outside in nature and ground every morning with the sun in my eyes and without my sunscreen on. So definitely all those help. Beamer mats and PEMF that also that way help. Red light itself is so good to stimulate mitochondria. And I was surprised to learn that 90% of our melatonin is actually made in the mitochondria, and then the rest of it in the pineal gland. And so that can be a game changer when it comes to good sleep.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's talk about, in my patients, when they come to me and they're having sleep issues, we'll do a full hormone panel like the Dutch panel. But oftentimes cortisol is, within normal limits, or right at the median level. And so then I kind of start doing a questionnaire that investigates basically symptoms of chronic infections, because those inflammatory cytokines, punch holes in the blood-brain barrier. Do you see that in your patients?
Absolutely. So when you've done the basics like diet and exercise and gut repair, and you're still having issues, and you've even looked at their hormones, then yes, that is something I inevitably find, is that their cytokines are through the roof, and they have underlying mold or Lyme or other chronic infections leading to a myriad of symptoms, including insomnia.
Absolutely. And so the primary patient population that you see is women going through menopause or perimenopause, correct?
That's right.
And
And
go ahead.
yeah, they're just struggling because the thing is, I almost feel that this whole section of age group among women is largely ignored by conventional medicine. We really have nothing to offer other than birth control pills or synthetic hormones, which not only do not help, but actually do harm.
Yeah, and they add copper to the body, become copper toxic, a host of other things. And so I agree with you. That's a often neglected patient population. Do you work with a lot of high-performing women? I mean, everyone performs at something. So I had a performance coach on yesterday. And when I said I work with high performers, people said, "Oh, you only work with CEOs and pro athletes." No, because everyone, if you're a parent, you're a high performer. Parents are very busy
Yes,
people. I mean, you know that, being the mother of three
yes.
kids. And so do you see any additional stressors in those patients?
Absolutely. Just life itself, and especially when you're driven, when you have a lot of things going on in your agenda, there are too many moving parts. It's almost like your sympathetic drive is up compared to your parasympathetic drive. And in that situation, one of the first things to is your sleep. And I see this a lot in, people over 40. They want to achieve more, they want to do more with their physical health as well, and they're training for a triathlon, but they may be waking up as early as 3 a.m. to get ready to start doing a grueling training session. And one thing that is not being then prioritized is sleep. Or even when they try to go to bed earlier, they struggle with it because their brain's going zing, 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 and they just can't calm it down enough to go to sleep. And even their body, they are training, but they're not giving it enough time for recovery. And so I love the Oura ring, which we have other great trackers where your overall readiness score is really influenced by not only the amount you exercise, but your heart rate variability and your recovery from exercise.
Right.
And of course, your sleep, which includes the different stages of sleep. And so if you are not sleeping deeply, it is going to impact your functionality, your productivity, your energy, the next day. And when it comes to high performers, that is absolutely something they can't afford to compromise on.
Right. Absolutely. I agree. And I see people who, the more stressed out they get from work or a relationship, the harder they work out. But in reality, you should decrease the number of sets because, that's an additional stressor. It's a hormetic or beneficial stressor, but still, the total allostatic load or total stress load on the body, determines your ability to recover, correct?
Absolutely. And we just don't lay enough stress on how important that is in your overall longevity and your health and wellness.
Absolutely. So let's talk about neurotransmitters. I've worked a lot with neurotransmitter metabolites in the past. I think most people, especially in the past 3 or 4 years, are skewed towards high glutamate, low GABA. And I know progesterone binds to one of the GABA receptors. So do you see people sort of calming down and sleeping better once their progesterone levels improve?
So absolutely, when it comes to progesterone, I do measure the levels and I do the Dutch test. And it is kind of a hallmark during this time period, especially in the perimenopause, where there may be an absolute or a relative deficiency of progesterone as compared to estrogen. And so the symptoms associated with that can be moodiness, depression, anxiety, brain fog, as well as lack of sleep. So absolutely, progesterone, after it gets metabolized in the body, gets broken down into a substance that has GABA-like activity, which then helps really calm the nervous system down and sleep more easily, but also be less anxious. And long term, that impacts the brain health, and therefore it's such a neuroprotective hormone. And the downside effect, the neurotransmitters like GABA that it produces, also are key to good sleep, good mood, good emotions, and good memory.
Absolutely. Yes, I couldn't agree more with that. Do you have a particular topical GABA or an oral GABA supplement or GABA L-theanine combination that you like?
Yes, I use my own proprietary blend of GABA and theanine, which I love, especially for sleep. And I also recommend micronized compounded progesterone when needed.
Right. So I've had, Dr. Tabitha Barber and a few other hormone experts on, but tell our listeners the difference between progesterone and progestins.
Oh, there's a huge difference. So progestins are the synthetic progesterones that are sold commercially, and they actually will increase risk of blood clots and also increase risk of breast cancer and the other downsides to the Women's Health Initiative study, whereas the progesterone is the natural one that's bioidentical and resembles our own hormones identically in structure. And using progesterone as compared to progestin can be a game changer when it comes to balancing our hormones. And this is for any age group, even younger women or older women, it doesn't matter, across the board. And most birth control pills or synthetic hormones contain progestins, which is something I absolutely do not recommend. I actively advise against it. And there is a big difference compared to progesterone and progestin in how it makes you feel, but also the effects or the side effects that progestins can have on our body.
Yeah. So thank you for that answer. It's very thorough. If you could touch on the difference between, so a question I get a lot is, what exactly does bioidentical mean? And what I was trained or taught is that bioidentical simply means it mimics the body's own hormones. It doesn't necessarily mean it's from natural sources. It could have been synthesized at a compounding pharmacy, but it binds to the receptors and has the same activity that endogenous hormones would. Is that correct?
That's correct. And even structurally, when you look at the rings, for example, of estrogen, they are identical to the estrogen that our own body makes as compared to conjugated synthetic estrogen, where a whole ring structure is slightly different. It may be similar, but it's not the same. And in that matter, I would like to add that xenoestrogens also resemble our own estrogen, but are not exactly the same, but they can vie for the same receptors and occupy them and create tons of problems like weight gain and even further risk of breast cancer. So that's why and the bioidentical hormone sourcing does matter too. And I do recommend the wild yam sourcing versus the GMO soy-based estrogens and creams and what are considered bioidentical hormones.
Right. Well, let's talk about testosterone in women. So, you can't treat your family, can't be a prophet in your own kingdom. So, a few years ago, well, about 6 or 7 years ago, I sent my mom to a local MD who claims to do functional medicine. And I went with her to sort of translate. And she gave me a copy of the labs, and her testosterone was, pretty much non-existent. And my mom has osteopenia. So I said, well, aren't you going to write her for some testosterone? She said, oh, no, I only give that to women if they want to have sex like every day. And I said, well, what about bone density, brain health, heart health? She said, nah. Can you comment on that?
Absolutely. So women, we make 10% the amount that men make, but we do need it and we do make it, and not just for sex drive and well-being, but really for all those things that you mentioned, for lean muscle mass, bone mass, which are the hallmarks of good health as we age and age in a healthy manner. So whether it's brain health, whether it's because good skeletal muscle is equal to good heart health. Your heart at the end of the day is a muscle, and even insulin resistance. And because again, when you maintain good lean muscle mass, then you know that you're not going to be accumulating visceral fat, which is linked with insulin resistance and further risk of cardiometabolic disease. So you're actually reducing not only obesity, but risk of heart disease. And yes, well-being and energy, good sleep, sexual wellness, all of those are benefits of testosterone. And it doesn't matter if a woman is in her 70s or even 80s, it is a great addition to estrogen and progesterone.
Absolutely. So let's talk about if someone has, a few nights of bad sleep, the sort of hormone imbalances they can expect. I know personally when I don't sleep well, not only do I eat more, but I crave carbs the next day. And I know, insulin, glucagon are kind of thrown off. Can you touch on that?
Absolutely. So good sleep is important, and it kind of goes hand in hand with good hormone balance. So definitely when you don't sleep well, it impacts your metabolism, your cravings. So it impacts hormones like leptin, ghrelin, insulin, and growth hormone. And when they are shifted because of lack of sleep, yes, you will not only be tired and groggy and sleepy and brain foggy, but yes, you will crave more of the unhealthy comfort foods like carbs, which then kind of become a vicious cycle that we're trying to lose weight, but we cannot. And we think that we need to eat less, but it's really our hormones that are driving our cravings. A lot of times it's not that you don't have any self-control, it's what's controlling you, and your hormones play a big part in that. And hormones themselves are greatly influenced by the time of sleep, but also quality of sleep.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of the guys at my gym, they think I'm on anabolic steroids. They're 20, 21 years old, and they're sleeping 5 hours, maybe less per night. And I'm like, listen, you're eating junk, you're staying up, watching, screens, blue light, and you're not taking a multi-mineral, multivitamin, you're not eating organic, and you want to go on steroids. If that happens when you're 20, what's life going to look like when you're 30, 40, 50? It's not going to be good. And
Exactly.
so, I couldn't agree more with the sleep and hormone balance thing. That's why bodybuilders are so adamant about going to bed at 9 p.m., getting that growth hormone spike.
Yes. And, that age group at 20, you think you can party out on Friday night and make up on Sunday night, but that the body doesn't work that way.
Right.
And in fact, it actually impairs learning, impairs creativity, impairs productivity. So sleep and even your dreaming is a good sign that you will be creative and productive the next day. So if you're a student and you cram on Sunday night for a Monday morning exam, you're probably not going to do very, very well if you've been up partying all night on Friday night.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, in undergrad, I would study, like, for example, cell and molecular biology. I would study a little bit every day. So, you know, if you only had 3 exams a semester, by the time the exam came around, the day before, I was going to the gym, just relaxing because I'd already done the work. Everyone else was cramming. And that was the difference between, you know, me, it didn't teach me functional medicine, but it allowed me to understand functional medicine, G protein coupled receptors, Tata boxes, you know, epigenetic signaling, all those things. And so memory consolidation happens during sleep, correct?
Absolutely. And those things you mentioned are so fascinating. And that's the beauty of functional medicine, that you're still using those principles of physiology that you learned in school, but now you're applying it clinically.
Right. Yeah. And, you know, I think if they would share just a few clinical insights with people in cell and molecular biology about, okay, you know, here's the electron transport chain. Here's how you can use this knowledge to make someone's life better, then a lot more people would be interested. And most of the students that were in my classes, pre-med classes, they couldn't get out of the cell and molecular biology and biochemistry fast enough. But, you know, at a macroscopic 30,000-foot view, you know, someone comes to you with glaucoma or cancer, I mean, it's still happening at the cellular level, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And that is not only fascinating, but it's key to good health, because yes, we are living longer, but we want to not just live longer, but live healthy and longer.
Right.
And those are some of the parameters at the cellular level that luckily now with the advancements in science, we can measure and quantitate so much of this, which makes it even more interesting.
Absolutely. So what would you say has been something that you know today that you use in practice that you really wish you would have known 12 to 15 years ago?
I think that food can play such a big role. So I suffered with IBS literally all my life. And growing up in India, I did have underlying parasitic infections because of the water we drank when I was serving people in the underserved villages and rural areas. But one of the things that changed my life was I didn't realize that I didn't have celiac, but I did have a huge sensitivity to gluten, and just eliminating that. And now I don't have any of the IBS symptoms at all. And I see that now so in so many of my clients that food is really medicine. And lifestyle is the best medicine. You really do not need drugs. I was traditionally trained as an allopathic MD, but I find now that I'm further and further removed from prescription medications and a big proponent of lifestyle. And I love biohacking. I love things like peptides. I just feel these are the future of medicine.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love peptides as well. One peptide I've tried for sleep in the past is delta sleep inducing peptide, which, you know,
Yes.
definitely helped. But obviously, we got to put a limit on how many things we buy and do in terms of peptides and gadgets.
Yes.
You know, otherwise, I'm going to go bankrupt. So I try to put a limit on it. But in terms of things that people can do to optimize their neurotransmitter levels, what are some things you recommend besides getting enough protein and amino acids?
So definitely agree with protein and amino acids, but definitely some natural ways of improving your neurotransmitters are simple things like honoring your circadian rhythm. Getting out in the sunshine will improve your serotonin production in the day and your melatonin production at night. Also, using your blue blockers and avoiding the use of devices at least a couple hours before bedtime can also increase melatonin production. Also, caffeine can impair adenosine, which is the main sleep driver. So try to limit caffeine. Coffee isn't bad. I love coffee, but make sure your coffee is clean and mold-free. But try to have it before 2 p.m. because then the half life of caffeine is at least 5 to 6 hours. And if you are trying to get a good night's sleep, that can really influence it. Also, timed eating. So I love intermittent fasting. And again, listen to your body. If you're a woman on your cycle, then don't do it if you're not feeling good. So, but most days, I myself tried to get in a 16-hour fast, and I didn't get there overnight. It was over a period of time, but now that's normal for me. So I wouldn't recommend someone who has never done it go out and do it, but start with 12 hours and slowly build up. But your timed eating can influence hormones such as not only growth hormone, but neurotransmitters like melatonin as well. And when you balance your hormones, you're supporting your neurotransmitters, whether it's cortisol, testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, as well as thyroid. And so again, other than proteins, making sure your diet has enough of things like selenium, zinc, iodine, molybdenum, magnesium, all these minerals are really essential. And other things that can influence are red light therapy, for example, to stimulate your mitochondria. And then there are so many supplements, whether it's theanine, whether it's, the good fats like your phosphatidylserine, whether they are adaptogens. So there are many, many out there that can really help support your neurotransmitters and hence your sleep.
Yeah, absolutely. So with, our modern day lifestyles, I agree with everything you've said. I find with my clients and patients that it's difficult sometimes, like they may be motivated to make the changes, but it's incongruent with, the rest of the family or with their friends and other family members. So how do you kind of coach people through that?
Definitely. First of all, it's not going to happen overnight. You definitely want to hang out with people who don't want to diss your lifestyle, but who are supportive of you. And, they say that you are the sum of the 5 people that you hang out with. And so why not pick and choose? At least when it comes to your family, you can't choose, but with your friends, you can. And I have found over time that I have gotten away from friends who aren't supportive of my lifestyle. But even with family, it takes some time, but I think they come around when they see that you're in a better mood, you look better, you feel better. And so even my kids, they're young, they're 21, 18, and 12, but they have noticed themselves that when they follow their mom's advice, then they feel better, whether it's with foods or with lifestyle. And they're willing to try new things. Like we had a real cold spell of winter in Alabama, and my son took a cold dip and felt great after that. Or he's working out at 21. And so that's really nice to know.
Absolutely. So how do you mesh, your functional and regenerative medicine lifestyle and practice with your husband being a traditional allopathic surgeon?
He is actually a heart surgeon, so he is very supportive because I keep people off his operating table. But of course, sometimes people are way far too gone, and then they end up getting under his knife. But yeah, he has been intensely supportive of what I do, because he has also seen changes in his health, which sometimes he may not be 100% in agreement, but we have found a good way of gelling it together. But also he sees how passionate I am about it, how it changed my life, and that's, I think, what sold him over.
Yeah, so let's talk a bit about that, because you started out in family medicine, correct? And
That's
then
correct.
what motivated you, or what introduced you to functional medicine?
So when I had my first child, it was in an emergency C-section. And even though I was a doctor, a resident, it actually, after I got home with my baby, my life had completely changed. I was noticing things like brain fog, fatigue, hair loss, weight gain, headaches, tummy upset, and low libido, all these things. And I just could not understand what was going on. But, the antibiotics, the anesthesia that I had gotten had completely flipped a switch in my body. And it was really much, much later that I found functional medicine, and it completely changed my life. What I found was I had Hashimoto's, that my own thyroid was being attacked by my own immune system. I had leaky gut and underlying infections, food sensitivities. And it wasn't till I found the right guidance, the right mentorship, the right foods. But because it completely changed my life, I couldn't go back to practicing medicine the way I did. And that's why I completely changed to functional medicine. And that's why I'm so passionate about it. And I love what I do, because it's been so transformative, not only for me, but also for those whom I help.
Absolutely. And so, speaking of the people you help, is your practice exclusively virtual, or do you see patients in person as well?
I do both, because I also do things like pellets and IV therapies and neurofeedback and ozone. So for a lot of those therapies, we have a brick and mortar place, but we do virtual assistance as well to help others.
Awesome. Is there any other wisdom you'd like to impart onto our listeners and viewers today that they can use as actionable information to help their lives?
I think one of the most powerful things, which is absolutely free, is really sunlight. I mean, without it, life would not have even began on planet Earth. So just using the power, whether it's for vitamin D, whether it's for mood and serotonin, whether it's earthing and grounding, whether it's for melatonin, I just love. And one of my favorite things to do is watch the sunset in different parts of the world, because I love to travel. So I would say that's the one pearl that I'll leave you with, that is absolutely free. And, if we didn't have sun, there would be no life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well said. So, where we're going to post the links, but where can people find you if they want to check you out?
My Instagram is at Farah Sultan MD, or my website is vitalogywellness.com, which is VITALOGY.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for the work that you're doing. And hopefully we can have you back on in the future.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure. And thank you so much. I'm so grateful.
Thank you.